Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be the best wildcard team for Game Week 7. Some of you may have activated already, such as in Game Week 6, but this will still be applicable to everyone watching, as it will help you with your transfer plans to identify the best players and fixture swings. On screen you can see the player rankings on Drafthound, and it's actually determined by expected points over the next 3 game weeks. Erling Haaland is top, and Cole Palmer has risen to second, with Salah, Saka and Martinelli in the top 5. Diaz, Watkins, Trossard, and Boomer, and Harvey Barnes finish the top 10. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and there is a link to Drafthound in the description. I'd highly encourage you to check it out. For just as little as £2 per week, you can become a pro pay-tier member. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, our aim is to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. My squad value is 101.4 million, and I would have 0.1 million left over after building this 50-man squad. So some of you watching might have even more money to spend to make some upgrades, but others might not have as much, and you might have to make a downgrade here or there to afford this 50-man squad. But let's start with the 2 goalkeepers, and of course pick 5 defenders, 5 midfielders, and 3 forwards. There are budget restrictions. It's not like the limitless chip from UCL Fantasy, and these changes are permanent to your squad. Arsenal kept a clean sheet in a 2-0 victory over Paris Saint-Germain, but in Game Week 6, Arsenal were 2-0 up at half-time, and Leicester scored 2 goals out of nowhere, it seems, with a deflection of Kai Havertz for the first one, and James Justin scored a brace with a fantastic volley to hit the post and go in. So those that went for David Raya and maybe Gabriel Saliba would have been left very disappointed from Game Week 6, myself obviously included, but I still think Arsenal have the best defence in the Premier League, and there are some tough games between Game Weeks 9 to 11, but if you look long term, Arsenal's run until April is incredible. They've got a lot of tough games out of the way already, like Aston Villa and Tottenham away, even Manchester City away from home. So I think Arsenal can go on a run from now until April, and even in these tougher games, they raise their level, particularly from a defensive point of view, and I think David Raya is the best goalkeeper in Fantasy Premier League. But if you can't afford him or want to make a downgrade here, Flecken is still a decent choice at 4.5 million. You've got Muric at 4.4. I still like Onana, but United can be terrible defensively from time to time. And you've also got Robert Sanchez, as Chelsea have shown improvements in the last couple of weeks. But the second goalkeeper will just be a backup, 4 million option, especially if you go for David Raya. There's no need to go for a 4.5 million backup goalkeeper. So I'm going for Fabianski. This could be Valdimarsson, especially if you go for Flecken as your main choice between the sticks. But I think with these two, you'll be fairly happy until the end of the season. I still like Saliba as an FPL option, but it's worth mentioning that Timber was subbed off at half-time as he felt some pain, and Arteta didn't want to take any chances with that whatsoever. But Timber has been incredible whenever he's played for the Gunners, but my recommendation would be Gabriel to cover that defence, with Raya probably being the best way overall between the sticks. But I think Gabriel, with the set-piece threat, he's got so many goals throughout the last couple of years, the most actually of any defender in Europe's top 5 leagues since 2021. So I think Gabriel is definitely worth involving into your FPL squad. He costs 6.1 million, 6.2 now actually, but he is well worth that price tag. Only the likes of Trent can really match him or possibly outscore from now until the end of the campaign. The next pick will be a bit risky, and if you do go for this player, try to ensure you've got defensive depth to cover just in case he gets 0 minutes and you can have someone else coming on with a decent fixture. And that's Rico Lewis, who was incredible for Man City in the 4-0 win in the Champions League. He got an assist in that game for Erling Haaland. Hopefully he does that in FPL this weekend, but he did play 90 minutes. I'm a bit worried that he's not going to start against Fulham at home. That's always going to be a concern with any Man City defender you go for. If you've got extra funds, you can go for Gvardiol or Akanji. They're probably the 2 safest options in that defence, with Gvardiol playing on the left-hand side, but traditionally he is a centre-back and he's got a lot of attacking potential. So I do like Gvardiol as well, but I'd rather go for Gabriel, Saliba and Trent Alexander-Arnold in the long term. And some of you might want to go for Pedro Porro until Game Week 11. But I do like Rico Lewis. You just have to hope that he gets the minutes and starts, because 1-minute cameos will be very frustrating from the right back. And he also can play in the midfield, of course, with Rodri missing the entire season. I think that boosts Rico Lewis's chances of getting starts and a lot of minutes for Manchester City this season. I'm also going to go for a 4 million defender here in Van den Berg. There is still a chance he's going to be dropped in future weeks, but for now I'd go for him, as Brentford have a great fixture run in the long term, and I don't trust him defensively, but I still think for a 4 million option, you can't go wrong with Van den Berg. But if you do go for Flecken in goal, I wouldn't recommend this defensive double up. I'd probably go for another 4 million defender, such as Greaves from Ipswich Town. But let's complete this defensive line. And next up, I know people are probably going to be switching off and saying, what are you doing by going for this player? But I still think the fixtures are good in the long term, and I could see some clean sheets for Manchester United, and that is Mazzari at 4.6 million. But if you don't want to go there, you've got Van der Ven at 4.5, but I don't trust Tottenham defensively either, and the only one I'd recommend in that defensive line would be the Spaniard Pedro Porro. But Mazraoui is still decent against the better teams in the league like Spurs, as we've seen, and Liverpool. I look to bench Mazraoui, but against the weaker teams, so to speak, I think Mazraoui can get plenty of clean sheets, a few assists, and bonus points along the way. But let's complete this defensive line with another cheap defender who hasn't produced any returns so far this season, and that is Mykolenko. But Everton have incredible fixtures until Game Week 14 in early December. So with this defensive line, you've got attacking potential with Gabriel and Rico Lewis. You've also got the bonus points from those two and Mazraoui. You've got a 4 million option in Vandenberg, who's probably the best of a bad bunch. And Mykolenko has those fixtures. They also combine very well and rotate in your FPL team for the next couple of weeks in a very positive way. Bukayo Saka scored Arsenal's first direct free kick in over 3 years in that 2-0 victory over Paris Saint-Germain. It was a bit fortuitous, the way it didn't hit anybody and still went in as a direct goal, but I think Arsenal knew what they were doing with that set piece, and honestly, they just are so creative with their solutions and how they approach every single game with those set pieces and actions. But whilst admittedly Saka isn't as explosive as Haaland, Salah and Palmer, his consistency is right up there amongst any FPL asset. He did blank in Game Week 6. I think those that went there, whether on the wild card or making free transfers, were very unfortunate because he had 8 chances created, 4 of them being big chances, 8 take-ons and 7 shots, and on another day we could have been talking about 2 or 3 goal contributions and a massive haul. He did get 1 bonus point though, despite blanking essentially, but he was on 1 point on 3 bonus points and 2 of them were removed a day or so after the match had finished. But Saka for me is still a great option on the wild card, and I wouldn't be selling him against Southampton at home. That makes no sense whatsoever. But everyone's going to be talking about a certain Cole Palmer after 4 goals against Brighton, and I did actually include him in the Game Week 3 Wildcard Team podcast several weeks ago now, and also as a buy in the transfer tips this week and also a few months ago too. Palmer is a great FPL asset. The fixtures do turn very soon, so it is a bit of an awkward time to buy him, and I personally think the ultimate and optimal time would be Game Week 12 when Chelsea have a good fixture run. But Palmer is fixture proof. He can do it even against Liverpool and Arsenal, who he does face up until Game Week 11, and he's on penalties. Everything goes through him, and whilst Chelsea are improving and they're looking like a decent team right now who could finish 4th, it's really down to Cole Palmer. You take him out and I think Chelsea do kind of decrease dramatically in terms of quality, and they would miss him big time. We all know about that. It is essentially a one-man team for the last year or so. Cole Palmer is a great option, and the same goes for a mid-price choice here in Mbeumo. I prefer him over Jota and Diaz, if I'm being completely honest, but you can still go for a Liverpool attacker. Of course, Salah would be the best one, and I'd probably put Diaz in second and Jota in third. There are some concerns about the Portuguese international's fitness, but he'll probably be available by Game Week 7 or Game Week 8 after the international break. But let's now complete this midfield with 2 more slots, and they're going to be budget midfielders here, and Morgan Rogers is one of them. But if you have the funds, I wouldn't mind going for Semenyo or Smith Rowe. I don't see much separating all 3 of them, and they're probably the 3 best overall in terms of budget midfielders up until this point. But there is a certain Everton midfielder who got a double-digit haul once again with fantastic fixtures, who's arguably number 1 at this point in time, and that is McNeil. Now, you might want to go for Calvert-Lewin up front, and doubling up on Everton offensively or even tripling up with Mykolenko doesn't seem ideal, but I think 1 or 2 is fine considering their fixtures, and McNeil is a step above Calvert-Lewin right now, so I would suggest him as a 5.6 million midfielder. He did go up in price overnight, but he's still worth the money, and I'd probably go for him over Semenyo because of those fixtures in Game Week 7. Erling Haaland scored in midweek in the Champions League. That was his first goal in that competition. He has been a bit underwhelming recently, but that's still like 2 goals in his last 3 games. It goes to show how consistent he is. He blanked in Game Week 6 against Newcastle. The early kickoff curse struck again, but I still think Haaland is the one to go for on the wild card if you're picking between him or Palmer as your premium option because of those fixtures Man City have between Game Week 7 to 11. I don't think he's essential, but if you're wildcarding this week, I don't think it makes much sense to go for the likes of Salah and Palmer over Haaland when Man City are top of the fixture difficulty rating until Game Week 11, according to the likes of Drafthound. There is a link in the description below. But you'll be interested to see the other two forwards in this squad, and one of them is Jamie Vardy. Leicester City have excellent fixtures now after a relatively tough start. They made a good comeback against Arsenal and ultimately fell short towards the very end. Jamie Vardy didn't do much in that particular game, but he's a wily old fox. His positioning is still great. He makes some fantastic runs, and his finishing is still at a very high level. So Jamie Vardy is a decent option who you could rotate with your 5 midfielders, and he wouldn't start week in, week out for you, but with the upcoming fixtures, you could make a case that he's not someone you want to leave on your bench because he's got the potential to score in all of those games. And even against the top 6, his record against every single one of them is sensational. But finally, and this is a player I have in my own team, Dominic Solanke is definitely one to consider, with Spurs having a good run until Gameweek 11. Now, on the FPL website here, it says I'm 1 million over budget because, like I said, this squad would roughly cost around 101 million. If you built up some team value this season and you've got some of these players already, you will be able to afford this. But if you have a really low budget, then maybe downgrading Solanke to another budget forward like Calvert-Lewin, maybe Welbeck, or players like this, Raul Jimenez could be another one. That's something you could entertain, but ultimately I'd look elsewhere in terms of downgrades. I do like Solanke, and this sort of structure is ideal because you've got one budget forward, you've got Erling Haaland, who's the most expensive player in the game, and a mid-price forward, and that means you've got a bit more versatility, and you can move Solanke to Watkins with only 1 or 2 other moves being made to facilitate that transfer, and also you can go to other mid-price forwards like Nicholas Jackson, to name one particular example. So I'm very happy with this 50-man squad. But let's now head over to FPL.team, the website, and talk about the starting 11 and the captaincy. In goal, there are no questions about it. David Raya would be between the sticks. You can go for a cheaper option if you wish, and my advice would be Flecken or Robert Sanchez, but Chelsea's fixtures aren't particularly great, and I don't trust the Blues defensively, to be quite honest with you. The backline would be Van den Berg in Gameweek 7, but more often than not, you would start Mykolenko or Mazraoui with this setup. Lewis and Gabriel complete the defensive line with Palmer, Mbeumo, Saka and Rodgers in the midfield, Solanke, Vardy and Haaland up front. We've got Fabianski, McNeil, Mazraoui and Mykolenko on the bench in that order. I've got 0.1 million left over, so I can afford this squad myself. I wildcarded in Gameweek 6. It backfired massively. I would have scored 50 to 60 points without activating the chip, but I'm still very confident in my picks in the long term. And you don't need to go for Palmer, by the way, but it just seems like everyone's going to be going towards this sort of structure now and trying to fit him in. His price and also his ownership is soaring at the moment. And there are different sorts of structures I try to discuss every single week. Sometimes it will be a salad draft and no Haaland, or it will be both of them at the same time. Sometimes there might be no Palmer, but you've got another premium defender like Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it's all about your preference and what you want to go for. But it's worth mentioning that Chelsea's fixtures aren't looking that good for the next 4 to 5 game weeks. So you don't need to shoehorn in Cole Palmer, and you could go for something similar to what I discussed in the game week 5 and 6 best wildcard teams. And finally, let's discuss the captaincy quite briefly. You've got Haaland, Saka and Palmer to choose from with this setup. I wouldn't even mind Mbeumo at home to Wolves, and you've also got some decent options elsewhere, but I would probably go for Erling Haaland at home to Fulham. He scored a hat-trick in this fixture last season in a 5-1 victory for Manchester City. But for the Vice, it's very close between Palmer and Saka. I have to say Saka's facing a worse team, and his performance in Game Week 6 was incredible. So you could lean towards him as a Vice, or maybe if you want to go against Haaland for the armband. So I wouldn't mind going for Saka instead of Palmer. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But I think Palmer's explosiveness is what probably edges him in most weeks when you're deciding the captaincy. With Saka, you might have more of a guarantee of returns because of his consistency, but Palmer can give you these double-digit hauls on a very consistent basis. And since he made his debut back in Game Week 7 last season, no other player has produced as many double-digit hauls as Cole Palmer. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. I promise to get this to 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 7 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.